नमस्कार मित्रांनो, मी डॉक्टर परेश फालक. स्वागत आहे तुमचे आजच्या उत्साहवर्धक एपिसोडमध्ये. नमस्कार मित्रांनो, आज आपण कॅनेडियन ट्युलिप फेस्टिवलच्या लेगसी टूरला जाणार आहोत. लेगसी वॉकिंग टूरला. त्यामध्ये आपल्याला विविध फुलांची कदाचित माहिती मिळणार आहे. वॉकिंग टूर आहे, तर माझ्यासोबत तुम्ही पण चला, मजा येईल. आज वातावरण तर खूप छान आहे. पावसामुळे थोडं क्लाउडी वाटतंय, बट इट्स ओके, विल एन्जॉय.
Welcome to the Canadian Tulip Festival. Is it anyone's first time down at the festival? Wow, almost everyone. Well, welcome. So you're going to see obviously a lot today. I always like to start with a fun fact though. So Ottawa actually plants more public tulip garden beds per capita than any other city in the world. So right now in Ottawa we have over 1 million public tulips planted, and in Commissioners Park right across the street we actually have 300,000 tulips. So we will attempt to see as many as we can. Obviously with some of the weather we've been having lately. Hello, welcome. Some of the tulips are faring well, others have seen, well, they'll seem a little withered. But as we go through, we'll see some beautiful tulips along the way. Absolutely. So we will do our best to stay together as a group. I'll always let you know where we're going to stop. That way, if we are, weaving through people, we will always know where to rendezvous. Okay? Perfect.
I've got tulips.
You've got tulips. There we go. I love it. We start with the excellent. So this garden bed behind me is known as the Princess Juliana tulip bed. Now, does anyone know who Princess Juliana?
The Princess of Netherlands.
Ooh, Princess of the Netherlands. There we go. We got it. So during World War II, Princess Juliana of the Netherlands, as well as other members of the Dutch royal family, came to Canada. It was not safe for them to stay in Europe during the war. And so, of course, we Canadians welcomed them with open arms. And they actually stayed right here in Ottawa. And they sheltered throughout the war. Now, some exciting news that happened is that Princess Juliana, while here, she actually gave birth to her third child right here in Ottawa. In fact, just down the road at the Ottawa Civic Hospital. Now, the one complication is that for that child to be considered in the line of succession to the throne, she needed to be born on Dutch soil. Now, obviously, given the circumstances, this going home was not possible, right? So, the Canadian government actually declared Princess Juliana's hospital bedroom extraterritorial. So, on the day that Princess Margriet was born, a little piece of Canada became Dutch. And in fact, under Princess Juliana's hospital bed was a bucket of soil that had been brought over from the Netherlands.
God.
So they did their absolute best to make it on Dutch soil, right? Now, to celebrate the birth of Princess Margriet, the Dutch flag flew on the Peace Tower at the Parliament buildings. Now, in history, this is the only time that a flag other than the Canadian flag has flown on the Peace Tower. Now, granted, the royal family were able to shelter here in Ottawa throughout the war. And when the war was over, they were able to be reunited and all return home. Great news. And of course, they wanted to show their thanks to all Canadians. And therefore, 100,000 tulip bulbs were gifted to Canada. And of those first tulip bulbs that came, many were planted right here. Hence, it's called the Princess Juliana flower bed. Some of the others were planted kind of scattered around the city. We had some planted at a tulip bed at the Ottawa Civic Hospital where Princess Margriet was born. Some were planted at Beechwood Cemetery. Some, of course, down at Parliament buildings and the Peace Tower. So a little speckling of gratitude and thanks. Now, of course, after that initial 100,000 tulip bulbs, after that, the Netherlands has gifted 20,000 tulip bulbs every single year. A tradition that continues to this year and hopefully will continue on as well. So as we mentioned, in Commissioners Park, the area we're going to be exploring, we have 300,000 tulips. Many of them are the tulips that have been gifted over the years, including the batch that came this year. So very exciting. We're going to head down our next rendezvous point. You can enjoy the colors along the left. So you've admired some of the colors along the way. Believe it or not though, not everyone wanted these tulips to be planted here. Shocking, right? I see the look of surprise and shock. Yes. Well, you see, at the time, our Prime Minister was William Lyon Mackenzie King, and he actually felt that the bright and cheerful colors of the tulip would look like a terrible eyesore. Specifically, he was most concerned about any tulips that might be planted near the Parliament buildings. He actually thought the bright colors would clash with the Gothic architecture of the buildings. We can of course giggle about this now, but he actually at the time said it was absolutely against his wishes for tulips to be planted specifically around the Parliament buildings and the Peace Tower. Now, out of curiosity, has anyone visited the Parliament buildings, Peace Tower? Have you seen tulips there?
Yes.
Yes, they are there. So obviously a little act of rebellion was needed. So what happened is they actually waited for William Lyon Mackenzie King to go away on business, and they planted all the tulip bulbs in secret. So of course, the following spring, when all the flowers bloomed, it was evident what had happened. Now the good news is that Mackenzie King was actually very pleased with the final result, and eventually he could see what really everyone knew all along, which was the tulips absolutely brought the city to life, and everyone loved the tulips, and even we can see on the most rainy days people flock to see the tulips. And if you've been down to the Parliament buildings, I'm sure you'll agree that the colors and the cheerfulness of the tulip actually kind of bring the Gothic architecture to life. So the opposite effect of what he thought. So he was pleased with the final results, and of course we cannot even imagine Ottawa without tulips now, right? Excellent. We're going to head straight down. Our next pit stop will be just around the corner. Huge statue. You can't miss it. Come ahead. Now this monument was unveiled in 2002 in order to celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Canadian Tulip Festival. In fact, it was unveiled by Princess Marguerite herself. So that was the one, of course, born during the war at the Ottawa Civic Hospital. In fact, you might have heard that last week, Princess Marguerite was actually here. Did anyone see that in the news?
14th, yeah.
Yeah, so she was here last weekend, and there was kind of an opening ceremonies to kind of kickstart the Tulip Festival this year, because of course we are celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Canadian Tulip Festival. So it's wonderful that she was able to return, and there was a beautiful ceremony right in front of the statue that she helped unveil 20 years ago. Now this statue is actually a replica. So it has essentially a sister statue, shall we say. Now if you look the direction that the statue is facing, and if we were to continue to travel halfway around the world, we would get to its sister statue. It is located in the Dutch city of Apeldoorn, which is where Princess Marguerite actually lives. And the neat thing is the statues actually face one another. So it's as if they're having a friendly conversation. And of course, this statue is really a symbol of the relationship and the friendship that formed between Canada and the Netherlands throughout the war. So we've got one hat being tipped off to Canada, one to the Netherlands. And of course, when we think of that relationship that built over some terrible years, it wasn't just, of course, the locals who were helping to support and shelter the family here, but when we think of all the Canadian soldiers and all the efforts to support, and even those who participated in the liberation of the Netherlands from Nazi reign. So really it is quite a symbol of that bond that is so strong, and I'm sure will continue to be strong forevermore. So pretty neat that we have the one statue facing the other. Excellent. Now, just before we move on, did everyone complete their homework? Did you see the fine print? You had some reading to accomplish. Did you do your homework? Okay, well, there is a test coming up, but I have faith. You all look like a very smart, bright group of people. I have faith that you are going to pass this test, even though you didn't. All right, we're going to test your tulip knowledge ahead. We're going to head to the large tree straight ahead. Come ahead. All right, so among everyone here, do we have any tulip experts? Oh, someone's being nominated. Have you been reading up on your tulip history?
Probably not.
Yeah. We're putting you on the spot. Oh, well, fair enough. I have a feeling, though, that this group probably knows more than you're letting on. So we're going to test this theory, okay? So I'm going to ask, we'll start with a very basic question. If you know the answer, you can shout it out, okay? So, shout out if you know Ottawa's official flower.
Tulip.
Yeah, that was a very quiet shout. Let's try this one more time. What is Ottawa's official flower?
Tulips.
See, you know so much. It's incredible. All right, clearly we need a harder question. So, there are actually 4 countries that have the tulip as their national flower. Can we all name one?
Switzerland.
Netherlands.
I heard the Netherlands. We're going to go with that one. Yes, so if you were listening, obviously the Netherlands and tulips, for sure. Now, we have not talked about the other 3 countries, but does anyone want to venture a guess? I did hear Switzerland, a good guess, but sadly, no.
No.
Any other thoughts? Any guesses? No, I haven't heard that guess. That's a good one. No, not
Australia.
that I'm aware of anyways. Not when I did this research.
Belgium.
Not Belgium, sorry, I heard. Not France.
Australia.
Something that ends, some countries that end in E.
Germany.
Oh, that works, but doesn't not what I'm going for. Too funny. All right, we'll help you out. So we've got, of course, the Netherlands, Turkey, Hungary, and Afghanistan. Yeah, so there you go. So those 4 countries have the tulip as their national flower. Now, in the Netherlands, I actually had a gentleman on one of my tours, and he shared something that I've been sharing with my groups. So, of course, yes, the tulip is the national flower, but he also said that a very common flower, which I guess is the runner-up, shall we say, is a flower called the Marguerite. And I guess there's your connection to the beautiful Princess Marguerite. Supposedly, the Marguerite is a flower that looks quite similar to our daisy. So there you go. That's what I've been shared by some local faraway visitors. So next time you're in Holland and whatnot, you'll have to look for the Marguerites as well as the tulips. Now, looking at the festival itself. So over the years, we're in its 70th year, we have had a number of well-known visitors through the years. Of course, we've already spoken about members of the Dutch royal family who have visited. In addition, we've had the Kennedys come to see the Tulip Festival. Now, are we all familiar with the singer Liberace? We've heard of him,
Yes,
a few people.
yes.
Yeah, so he actually has performed here on the Tulip Festival stage. And has anyone ever heard of Alanis Morissette?
Yeah.
Yes, a few people. So she's a Canadian singer-songwriter, and she actually debuted on the Tulip Festival stage at the age of 12. So 1987. Can you imagine at 12 standing up and performing in front of thousands of people? Yeah. So we like to say she started her career here at the Tulip Festival. So
Wow.
pretty incredible. Now, has anyone ever been downtown, perhaps looking at the Shaw Centre or around the Shaw Centre, kind of NEC area, a little bit? For those of you who don't know, the Shaw Centre is kind of a convention type centre. But the neat thing is when it was constructed, it's actually designed in the shape of a horizontal tulip. So for those of you who are curious about this, you can go home tonight and you can go on Google Earth and you can zoom in and you can get an aerial shot of the building, Shaw Centre, and you can actually make out the shape of the horizontal tulip. So it's kind of neat that we see kind of the theme of the tulip really across the city, right? Not just here at the Tulip Festival. All right, you pass the test. You get to keep going on our tour. Whew. All right, we're gonna actually head just straight but to our left. Okay, well so far, I don't want to jinx it, but we're pleased with this timing. I'm not sure if you've all just arrived down here or if you've had a chance to kind of explore, but either way, I did want to point out very quickly the display here in the center. So those panels behind me, if you haven't had a chance to read there, I strongly recommend it. It's basically a presentation about the war brides. So it's a bit of the perspective. I've jinxed it. I'm so sorry. Maybe it's just off the trees. So it's the trees. Whew, it's not on me then. So it's a presentation kind of hearing the voices of the brides, the wives of the soldiers who went off to battle. So it's a bit more of a serious, solemn exhibit, but it's absolutely beautiful. And if you haven't had a chance, I encourage you to go take a read sometime this afternoon. So we are standing obviously in the center of Commissioners Park. Now, believe it or not, but this park has not always been here, okay? In fact, where we're standing right here, this used to be the home of Old Man Booth's lumber yard, okay? In fact, the street right over there is Booth Street, named after the family and the very successful business. So, the lumber yard was here. Obviously, a dusty old lumber yard is a very different image than what we see today with the beautiful large trees and the open green space. Now, the government actually began constructing Commissioners Park in 1901, and they did it in very small chunks at a time. As they acquired the land, they were able to extend the park. So the entire park, which is a span of 1.2 kilometers, actually was constructed between 1901 and 1930. So as I said, very slow project. But at the same time, it is quite something to look around and see how what was once kind of an eyesore of a lumber yard has now turned into a beautiful green space for people to enjoy and explore, and of course is now the home of our Tulip Festival. Wonderful. We're going to continue to the next tulip bed, where we will chat a little bit more specifically about tulips, all right? Come ahead. Have any gardeners in the mix? Anyone who tends a garden? Yes? Not so much. Oh, yes, a gardener? A green... We're putting you on the spot. Don't worry, we won't test your knowledge. It's okay. Well, I'm sure anyone who has a garden or has ever attempted to have a garden can attest that it is a lot of work. So you might be looking around at the tulip beds, the grounds in general, and realize that obviously it takes a lot of manpower to maintain the grounds. Now, it is actually the National Capital Commission who is responsible for all the grounds that you are walking through today. Now, the NCC actually has roots dating back to 1899. So they've been around a long time. And to this day, their mission continues to be ensuring that their employees are designing and maintaining a capital grounds that all Canadians can be proud of. Now, of course, we said that there are 300,000 tulips planted in Commissioners Park. But what you might not know is that there are 75 wild species of tulip in the world. No, but your mind is blown right now, right? But at the same time, besides those 75 wild species, we of course have humans that have been doing a bit of experimenting with tulips, right? We've been designing different varieties and having a little bit of genetic adaptation to our tulips. And so through all of this, we actually have close to 4,000 different varieties of tulips in the world now. So quite something. So if you're wondering about all the colors and designs that we see and so on. A few things about the tulip itself. Now, you probably know that usually a tulip has one flower for one stem. But there are some varieties that have up to 4 flowers on one stem. And we do have some planted here in Commissioners Park, so you'll have to keep an eye out for those on your walk. Another interesting tulip to spot is basically it's a solid color, but then it has a line cutting down the center of each petal. So if you see that, it actually has a very poetic name. It's a broken tulip. Very sad, right? But the legend says that if you find a broken tulip, you make a wish on it, it will come true. So you'll have to try that. Let me know if that all works out. We do have some broken tulips planted in Commissioner's Park. Now, another thing you might not know, maybe the children have discovered this, I don't know, but tulips are edible. Have you ever eaten a tulip?
No.
Yes, they do. That, well, much to our our disappointment, right? You are right. Well, although they are not cultivated, of course, for the purpose of consumption, tulips are indeed edible. Now, supposedly, the flower, if you were to eat the petals, it tastes like a cross between an onion and a potato. So more on the savory side as opposed to sweet. I do have to preface this with that we asked you not to eat the flowers in Commissioner's Park, please. But if you have tulips at home, you can give it a try. In addition, the tulip bulb itself is also edible. And in fact, during World War II, often the soldiers did eat the bulbs. Yes, so probably a little earthier, but full of nutrition, of course, in challenging times where food was maybe hard to find and you needed to keep your energy up. So there you have it. The stem itself is edible, but apparently not very tasty, a little on the bitter side. So aim for the flower, or if you're very adventurous, the bulb. So we're going to continue along. We're actually going to see the next tulip bed, a beautiful tulip by the name of El Nino, which is a cross between pink, orange, and yellow. Reminds, if you picture a fiery sunset in your mind, that's what it brings to my mind anyways. We'll see if you agree. So we'll just head... So let's just think back again to the war for a moment. All right, so let's think about specifically Ottawa. Now, obviously, as horrendous as a time it was, if we actually think specific to Ottawa, there was some good that we can say came from this very difficult time. So Ottawa itself at the very beginning of the war was still a relatively small city. There were only about 100,000 people living here at the time. Now, of course, when Ottawa was actually declared the future capital of Canada, people were actually quite surprised. They wondered why not some of the largest cities, Toronto or Montreal, even Kingston, which had been used previously. So the reality is, when we think about Ottawa, during the war, Ottawa became a city to rally around. We began to centralize the war effort here. And so with that came a lot of growth. The population in Ottawa over just those few years actually grew by over 50%, which is substantial for a relatively short period of time. Now, of course, with the war, that brought about the demand and the need for equipment. So we suddenly needed to, in a timely manner, be building airplanes and bombers, and we needed to produce airplane replacement parts and rail cars. And with all this demand, we saw industries and factories popping up in the city. And of course, then the workers and the families flocked to the city as well. So we had all of this growth happening quite quickly. Now, with that, we also had the growth of bureaucracy. So we had the Canadian government, they began to intervene in all aspects of Canadian life in order to regulate the war effort. We saw civil service agencies like the Board of Trade and the National Housing Program. They were created. So although, of course, it was a tragic time, we can look back and say that truly for Ottawa, the war time was a watershed moment. And it really did transform a relatively quiet and smaller city into quite a bustling and thriving capital city. So quite a transformation. Wonderful. We're going to continue along. So tulips are indeed perennials, so they do bloom for more than 2 years. Now, that being said, of course, there are environmental factors that play a bit of a role, as we've definitely seen this week, and as all Canadians know. So as far as kind of longevity, it does vary a little bit depending on the climate. Obviously, as you've seen at the beginning, a lot of the tulips were damaged with some of the heat we had last week, then the cooler nights we had at the beginning of this week, and then of course the storm that came through yesterday, which I'm sure we all had a scary experience in that storm, but I'm glad to see you're all here, which means we're all good. So again, in general here, because the tulips we do want to have the tulips looking their best as much as possible, the NCC tends to turn the bulbs over every 3 to 4 years. So you wouldn't need to do that if you had tulips at home. You might actually notice that they just keep coming no matter what you do, and that's wonderful. But again, they're always kind of, because they're trying to to design different patterns, different colors. As new varieties of tulips are created, they want to kind of embed those. So here there's a bit more turnover than what you would typically need to do in a garden. Does that make sense? Perfect. So this stop, I have good news and bad news. But I'm going to start with the good news because I'm a positive person. So the red monument here behind me is a monument that basically represents the tulip that was designed in order to celebrate Canada's 150th year. So you may remember, it's been, I don't know, a few years now, more than a few. But that year there was a tulip designed, and it was quite stunning. It was white with a fiery splash of red. Of course, it was meant to symbolize the maple leaf in the center of our Canadian flag. So that's what the theory behind the design. Now, the tulip itself goes by either the name, the 150 Canada tulip, or some people refer to it as the maple leaf tulip, so more commonly perhaps. All right, so that's the great news. Now, here's the bad news. Prepare yourselves. So a couple weeks ago, obviously, we were doing the final touches preparing for the Tulip Festival, and I met with one of the NCC gardeners, and I said, okay, so we're going to stop here, we're going to talk about the Canada 150 tulip. I said, did you plant them? And he said, oh yes we did. There'll be lots of Canada 150 tulips. That's the bad news. So all week I've been just clinging to the hope that they were magically going to pop up, and they haven't. So at this point I'm starting to lose hope. Now who knows if the squirrels got to them, who knows if someone told me a falsehood, who knows if, well, I heard actually that there's a few Canada 150 tulips down at Parliament Hill, so perhaps they went to the wrong place. I don't know. So I really truly wish I could show you one of those tulips, but if you haven't seen it, I do encourage you to Google a picture. If you type in Canada 150 tulip, you will see it, and I'm sure as you look in the center of that red splash, it will make you think of our Canada flag. If you do get down to Parliament Hill, do look for the maple leaf tulip, okay? I see a few of you already looking up, so share the pictures. All right, we're going to just continue ahead. Wonderful. So, sorry, just a question that was asked just to let everyone know. If you are either coming back later or staying on tonight, there will be fireworks, 10 o'clock here in Commissioners Park. Supposedly out over the water, but I've been told pretty much if you're anywhere in the park, you should catch them. They will be rain or shine as long as it is not thunder and lightning, which is not in the forecast. It's supposed to be a clear evening. So fingers crossed. So we have, as you can see at this point, we of the 1.2 kilometers of Commissioners Park, we are about halfway or just over half. So as you look ahead, you can see obviously many more tulip bulbs that we're not going to get a chance to see, that you're going to explore on your own when I release you. The tulips themselves, not only are they turned over every 3 to 4 years, as I mentioned, but they are also planted in a staggered fashion. So of course, we are aiming for over, the tulips themselves bloom typically for 2 weeks. We're trying to aim it into this lovely 10-day festival, and we're trying to, of course, work with very unpredictable weather. So as a result, the gardeners tend to plant some on the earlier side, then we do a mid plant, and then a final one. So that's why you'll see, obviously, that some tulips are a little more past their prime, and some are perhaps just having come up. So as you continue on, you'll see some of the more kind of robust and healthier late bloomers. So they'll be great to take some pictures of. Now, I always like to kind of slowly wrap up with the beginning. We're going to end with the beginning. So we know that we are here celebrating the 70th anniversary of the Tulip Festival. But you might not know how it all began. So does the name Malik Karsh ring any bells? Karsh. Any photographers among us? No. Oh, I'm seeing a nod. You know who I'm talking about. Awesome. Well, Malik Karsh, he emigrated to Canada in 1937 from Turkey. You might also know his brother. He's also another famous photographer, although he was more known for portraits. Whereas Malik Karsh absolutely loved to capture nature's beauty. And so he actually photographed Canada from coast to coast and the remote areas in the north. He absolutely loved to celebrate the beauty he had found in this country. He actually lived a very prolific life. He actually was an officer of the Order of Canada in 1996, so quite an accomplishment. Now, out of all the cities that he traveled to in Canada, he absolutely fell in love with Ottawa. In fact, if you look up some of his photography, you'll see that where he signs his name, he actually writes the word Ottawa underneath. And not because it's a picture of Ottawa, but simply because to him that was now his home. That was where his heart was, and that was where he identified. With that being said, of course, he decided that a Canadian Tulip Festival would be incredible, and he wanted to start one. So it was he who approached the Ottawa Board of Trade with the idea of a Canadian Tulip Festival. So he came forward with the plans, the ideas, how we might fund it, and so on. And of course, they loved the idea. And so thanks to him, he is our founder, the very first Canadian Tulip Festival happened in 1953, which of course then brings us to today, celebrating the 70th anniversary. Of course, through the years, the festival has changed. We've seen it grow quite a bit. If you have been here in previous years, of course, COVID has put a damper on some of the things, and we are now just kind of starting again to open up and offer some programming again, now that folks are a little more comfortable about getting out and enjoying the fresh air again, and of course seeing the beautiful tulips. So we do have to thank Malik Karsh, because we would definitely not be here if it weren't for him. So at this point, I want to first of all thank you for your incredible attention. We all stayed together, which is remarkable. We didn't lose anyone. I've only ever lost one person, and we found them about 10 hours later, so it was okay. So really well done. We didn't have to send out a search party for anyone. At the same time, I do want to wish you well. If you have any questions at all, please come and ask me. I will do my best to answer. If not, I wish you a good rest of the day. Enjoy continuing to explore Commissioners Park. At 8 o'clock, there'll be movies in the park starting, and then of course 10 o'clock the fireworks later this evening. So hope to see you around as we mingle the rest of the day, but thank you for coming and enjoy the rest of your weekend. Thank you. Thank you very much.
तर मंडळी, कसा वाटला तुम्हाला ट्युलिप फेस्टिवल? हा ट्युलिप फेस्टिवल 14 मेला सुरू झाला, तेव्हा आपण ओपनिंग सेरेमनी बघितली. आज आहे 22 मे आणि उद्या याचा एंड होतो आहे. आज रविवार असल्यामुळे सायंकाळी रात्री 10 वाजता फायरवर्क्ससुद्धा आहेत. फक्त पावसाने थोडी उसंत घेतली पाहिजे, मग आपल्याला फायरवर्क्सची पण मजा बघता येईल, आतिषबाजी बघता येईल. बाकी तुम्ही कलरफुल आणि एन्जॉयबल ट्युलिप फेस्टिवल तर पाहिलंच आहे. पुन्हा भेटूया पुढच्या एपिसोडमध्ये. टिल देन, सायोनारा.